Hello guys, and welcome back to Leah's Lifestyle. Today we actually had a question on the YouTube that I wanted to answer, and the question was, I'll probably post it here somewhere if I can. What's your take on the new Fed chair and how it'll affect the economy? And so I just wanted to make a little video, do some research, of course, because the truth is I do keep up with some stuff, but keeping up with like who the Fed chair was something that was like on my to-do list, which I did learn a little bit about him and like what he was capable of doing. And he got us through the 2016 stuff, which was in my opinion. So learning about Kevin Warsh has been, I went way deeper into him. I watched a bunch of YouTube stuff. I got what kind of like the general idea of what everyone's thinking about him right now. And the basic of what I've gotten from him at the moment is that everyone believes Kevin Warsh agrees with Trump. And I think based on what I've seen him say, that is somewhat at least true, that he does agree with Trump on some things. Everyone believes that the Federal Reserve needs to be independent from the government. I agree, that's true. People are afraid that Kevin Warsh is not going to be independent, that he's going to be kind of like someone who is underneath Trump. That's what everyone keeps saying. That's what everyone's feeling like. Not that Kevin Warsh himself has said anything like that, but I think people are really scared that he's going to be just a lackey. And then people are deciding whether or not he is going to be likely to cut or raise rates. Based on what I found for Kevin Warsh in the past, I think he would have agreed in raising rates. I think now at this point, his goal is to probably cut rates from what I can tell. But he also hasn't specifically said at all that he's going to do that. In fact, his biggest thing has been that he's not going to share what he's going to say. Like in a couple of videos that I've seen now, he said specifically, like, I don't think it's appropriate for me to tell you like what my plans are or what I'm going to do because I haven't done them. That's completely fair. Like, he has a team of people that he's going to have to work with, and so for him to just be out in public just being like, this is what I'm going to do, that it would be inappropriate of him. And then a big thing is people are worried about inflation, stocks, savings, mortgages, and jobs at the moment. And people are very skeptical of whether or not he's going to be able to support or help, or if that's his goal even. So I'm not sure if people feel this way because of what Trump is saying, or if people are feeling this way because they don't know Kevin Warsh. I don't know Kevin Warsh very well, but like, I just did some research on him, and from what I've learned just recently, I don't feel like he's somebody, based on what he puts out into social media, that seems to be someone who wants to be against the people. Against, like, it doesn't seem like he's trying to harm them. It looks like his goal is long term. He has like a long term eyesight. I'm not sure if he's always had that, because he was once young too, and we all have to learn and have experiences and stuff to be able to decide where we're going to be in life. And so what people think Warsh believes from interviews, reporting, and other like past history is that he's more skeptical of massive government stimulation. He's criticized the Fed printing too much money after crises. He's concerned about inflation long term, and also politically he seems to be closer to Trump than Jerome Powell, right? Jerome Powell is very against Trump. He's very like, I'm not listening to you. I'm not stepping down when you want. I'm not going to do what you want from me. I'm not going to cut out because you don't like what I'm doing. So whereas I'm not, and I think it's funny because I don't know that Kevin Warsh will be much different in that stance. Like, I think if Trump was like, get out, Kevin Warsh, I don't like what you're doing, I'm not sure Kevin Warsh would behave much differently than Jerome Powell would be, because it seems like from the way that he spoke with, because I was watching like him being interrogated by some people for something, he doesn't seem like someone who's just going to be like, oh yeah, like I'll just do whatever, like, you know. So we'll see. This is all speculative, right? So people are really scared that Warsh is going to be Trump's puppet, essentially. And that's fair considering the fact that there seems to have been plenty of people that Trump has brought into other positions where that's clearly what they have been, or, you know, that's how they've been behaving. I don't know their names, but I've heard plenty of people online. He's like just fired a few people just randomly because he didn't like that they weren't. Oh, what was that lady's name who was like trying to deal with everything for the oh my gosh, don't forget it. My brain. I'm trying to switch from one thing to the other. My brain doesn't like that. The Epstein files. And she just got fired because he was like, you're not handling it well enough. But I'm not really sure like what else she could have done. Like, you know, like if you're trying to hide stuff and like you can only lie so much straight to the public before it becomes an issue. So it's interesting. And then there's like, what's the guy that's been drunk all the time and he's like in charge of like security and safety, and people are like, what the fuck? So there's clearly some people that like have been put in place, and I think like people are very scared, and rightfully so, of this person. I'm just not sure if based on this person's Warsh's like past history, if that would add him into those people, you know. I'm not quite sure on that. So historically, Warsh has actually considered more of what they call an inflation hawk, which is someone willing to keep raising higher inflation. And now he's seeming to encourage or support more cuts eventually, possibly. Like, it's not that he's straight out said that he's going to, but it's that he says he would like to. And the worry about that is like spiking again shortly after doing that, and that would keep rates elevated even if Trump wants them cut. And I think that's the biggest issue that people are seeming to have. I think the interesting thing is that people are really focusing on this, like cutting, not cutting, what did he do, if he do, did he agree to Trump or not. And I don't feel like people are fully listening to what Warsh has to say. They're really trying to get him to only speak on the inflation cuts, whether or not he's going to do it. They really want him to just say yes or no. And they're not really listening to his overall like sentiment or statements about this. And I think that's a big issue, that people are hyper fixating on this one issue when he continuously has been saying more than just like about these cuts. And one of the big things that he's talked about is having like a large budget. He doesn't like that a large balance sheet, excuse me. He doesn't like that the Federal Reserve since 2008 has been pumping out more cash, has been creating more bonds and stuff like that. And so he wants to cut that back. He wants to make that smaller. And essentially what that means is allowing some of these bonds and treasury bills and stuff to expire, to buy back stuff, to not pump or make more. He doesn't want any of that happening anymore. So he wants to go back. Essentially, instead of putting the gas on money, he wants to slowly take his foot off. And his belief is that, from what I understand, is that you can't just do one or the other cut down the balance sheet. You kind of need to do them together, right? And so it's kind of like, if you need an explanation in real world, it's kind of like driving from what I understand, I'm not, I just recently researched this, so please give me grace. It's kind of like driving a manual car, and you have the gas, and you have the brake, and you have the clutch. And when you want to go forward, you have to first to switch, to go faster, you have to put on the clutch and then take off the gas and move your gear, and then you gotta slowly put back on the gas and take off of your clutch, right? And if you want to slow down, it's the same thing. You have to put on the clutch, take it out of gear, and then you can start putting on the brake, and you can remove your foot from the clutch. And so in a sense, this is generally what he's trying to explain to people. I'm not so sure very well. I'm not so sure people are listening very clearly, but he's trying to say, like, there's multiple things that the federal government has tools to work with, and you guys are really focusing on the gas. You're like, are you going to push the gas and you're going to pull the gas out? And he's saying, like, probably pull the gas out, but, like, I'm not just going to take off the gas. He's like, there's these other tools I want to use, and I want to, like, work with them, so we're not like right? From what I've seen, which we'll listen to together, that's essentially what he's trying to say. Not that people are really allowing him to say it, but that kind of seems to me what he's trying to say. And he's also has agreed that he has talked to Trump about cutting inflation, and that he agrees with the ideas that Trump has, but he's also said that he's never agreed to just cut inflation to 1% because Trump said so. So, you know, Trump's, as far as I know, a fucking liar. So, I mean, we can believe Trump over him if we want, but as we'll get in farther in this video, I think you'll see why we can trust him more than Trump. It's all up in the air, though. It's not like I know these people in real life. So, a big thing about this, though, with adjusting these kind of things, right, is how it will affect the world, the economy, right? And a smaller balance sheet can mean that we'll have a tighter financial conditions, right? People aren't going to like that, especially if things are going to be costing more. It could mean higher long-term interest rates if they don't cut them. It could mean slower economic growth. It could mean less speculative investing, which honestly I don't like anyways. I'm not a speculative investor kind of person. I'm really learning Rule 1 and value investing. So I think, gambling investing should just go away to the wayside anyways. Leave gambling to being at the gambling places. Like, gosh. But it also could mean, if done correctly, if he has a good head on him and he's not just going to listen to doing whatever other people want, that it could be a long-term healthier market. Lower inflation rates eventually, and less chance of like mass bubbles like we're seeing right now with the housing and with the stock, right? Like, it's like, where's the S&P 500 at now? Like, higher than we've ever seen it before. So I can understand why people are afraid, because, like, and I can see why he wouldn't want to just share what he's going to do, because he doesn't want the harassment of people being like, oh, you're going to make things more expensive. And he's like, yeah, it's going to be a bumpy ride. It's not going to be easy. I'm going to have to do some things that are going to, make everyone scared. But the issue is that we're already in a situation where if we don't do something about it, like, it's going to be worse later. So it's better to rip the Band-Aid off now, How he feels about it essentially is that we've been overwatering ourselves with too much money, and he wants to bring it back so that we're not gonna give our soil too much water, so that way our roots will rot. He doesn't want that, and that's what he feels like is happening. So a less like artificial like support to the system. He wants it real economic growth, not just like, the Fed pumping in money so that it does grow. A more natural behavior, and less dependency on the Fed for money, right? Like, so that people aren't having to consume debt to survive. But the adjustment from because 2008 to now, almost 20 years, that's a long time to have been pumping in extra money, to have artificial support, to have a lot of excess debt. So economically, yeah, it's going to be rough if he does make these changes to do that, like, it's going to be fucking rough. I'm not even gonna try and sugarcoat it. Like, it's gonna be rough. It's gonna be difficult. But long term, it could be really positive for our market. It could be way better for policies. I don't really fully understand it, right? So, like, take this with a little grain of salt. But it's likely if he can do it well. And I think that's the situation, is, like, how is he going to do it well? And to look at that a little bit, to see if he can do it well, I think the best thing to look at is what he's done since he's gotten into his education. And he's graduated. He has a education. He went to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, Harvard University. So he went to Stanford, Hoover Institution. Like, he's done the education. But with his career, he's worked at Morgan Stanley from 1996 to 2002, National Economic Council from 2002 to 2006, the Federal Reserve Board of Governors from 2006 to 2011. He has a tenure since 2006, and he's worked with, like, the Vice President Dick Cheney, which I'm not sure. I don't know him very well, but I don't feel like I have very many positive thoughts on him. So I would have to look into him to know that for sure. He has criticized where what the Federal Reserve has done over the last, like, since 2008. So maybe what he could do is better. Maybe what they've done is the best that they could have done. You know, I know 2016 could have looked much worse than what it did. So it's hard to say, right? When you're on the outside, it's much easier to criticize than when you're in. But he's also worked, like, in Wall Street and stuff. So it's like he does understand how the market's functioning and where it's at. Post-governor work from 2011 to 2025, it says here, after leaving the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, Warsh became a partner of the DeQuincy family office, the firm of Stanley Druckermill, and he served on the board of directors for United Partial Services and Kuopang. He became the Shepherd Family Distinguished Visiting Fellow of the Hoover Institution and visiting scholar of the Stanford Gratitude School of Business prior to the expected conclusion of Janet Yellen's term as chair of the Federal Reserve in 2018. Warsh was considered to be the possible nominee, which I know that he did try and go after it, but of course we know that he did not get it, right? Which now he's becoming the successor of the person who took it before him. So it's not like he hasn't tried to be there before. It's not like this is new for him to try and get in. I think it's very normal for nominees who have been trying to do something to work with, you know, their most likelihood of support to get in. So I don't think it's weird to see him somewhat agreeing with Trump. I can see why it concerns people. I totally understand that. So I was looking at some news articles, and a lot of it was speculation, truthfully, but I found a few that I felt like were pretty decent and that used some of his own verbiage, quoting him and what he said, but also sharing plenty. So I picked out three. This is the Politico, sorry. And here, there was a section here. Okay, so Warsh has said he wants to reform some of the Fed's decades-old tool, including how it tracks what's happening in the economy and how it communicates with the public and financial market. He argues that Fed officials talk too frequently about how they expect the economy to evolve in ways that are more of a distraction rather than providing useful information, given the inherent uncertainty of such predictions. this is a quote from him. Fed leaders would be well served to skip opportunities to share their latest musings, he said last year at an International Monetary Fund event. Quote, the swivel chair problem, rhetorically waxing and waning with the latest data release, is common and counterproductive. Warsh has also said the Fed's practice of buying trillions of dollars in U.S. government debt and bundling mortgages, which it has done after global crises to boost the economy, leads to distortion in the prices of stocks and bonds. He has expressed a desire to shrink those asset holdings, a process that some warn could be disruptive to markets. His disagreement about those policies with then Chair Ben Bernanke, with whom he had worked closely during the financial crisis, led him to depart from the Fed board in 2011, which we read that over in his job, right? We saw that he ended in 2011, and that seems to be the reason why, is he was really butting heads with the people there and didn't really enjoy it. So it seemed like even then, like, he was speaking exactly 2011, exactly like the way he is now. So it's only been 15 years. It's only been 15 years that he's been saying the same thing. And so it's interesting that people are saying, oh, you never used to talk like this, but the time frame in which they're saying this was over 15 years ago that he, would be speaking differently. So I don't think it's strange that somebody who's been doing this since 1996 has slowly adjusted their belief, has slowly adjusted the way that they perceive things, have slowly adjusted how strongly they believe in which direction you should do things, especially after working as a chairman on the federal board, right? He's probably had plenty of experience and exposure to it, so I'm not really seeing where people are assuming or obtaining his change in belief here. Okay, so the next one was Fortune that I found, where they were actually using quotes from what he was saying. And here it says, quote, but in practice, hiking interest rates... Oh, wait, maybe I should go up just a little bit more. I'll go with the balance sheet argument. It's the whole section here. I'll just read that. A further economic exercise in mental acrobats comes from Warsh's outlook on the balance sheet. Warsh wants to reduce the balance sheet, current standing at $6.7 trillion, and conventionally delivers another net argument for rate cuts without raising alarm bells over questions of Fed independence. As Professor Yamin Ma, the Columbia University Business School, explained in a conversation with Fortune in February, quote, people often think, oh, economic conditions, inflation expectations, and unemployment are determining interest rates, and the size of the balance sheet is like, whatever. Quote, but in practice, hiking interest rates is economic tightening, and reducing the size of the central bank's balance sheet is also a form of tightening because it also raises rates, and it's hard to estimate the extent of the interaction. But you can think broadly that if the size of the Fed's balance sheet is smaller, there is less liquidity in the system, and that is going to reduce inflation pressure. So, in one way, we can afford a lower interest rate without a smaller balance sheet. This potential stance isn't an argument that can be brought into play immediately, despite pressure from the White House to cut rates sooner rather than later. But Warsh's tenure at the Fed would, if confirmed, last beyond the current administration. His dovish learnings may go beyond the current outlook, remaining a feature of the next Fed era. So even in this one there, because like all the other ones, they really focused on like just the fact of interest cutting and stuff. And so I really liked in this one that they did bring up, like, people are like, they're saying like everyone is just like being like, interest rates cutting, oh no, what is this, oh you're like, and they're not focusing on what he continues to keep saying is like, it's not just about this, like there are other tools, there's other things I need to look at, I need to communicate with the team, like we're going to decide which pedals and where they need to go, and maybe that might be cutting interest rates. That is a part of it. He's not saying no, they're not going to, but he's saying that is a piece of it. The next one that I found was The Guardian, and in this one, a big part that I enjoyed reading was Because people are so concerned about what Trump has to say, and honestly, you know how Trump is, so I just feel like we shouldn't be listening to him as closely or taking everything he says with more grain of salt than what we expect. Candace Short Federal. Warsh has been a long-time critic. Okay. Warsh has been a long-time critic of the ultra-loose monetary policy pursued by the Fed since the financial crisis since 2008, including the central bank's expanded balance sheet. He had previously been seen as a monetary policy hawk, but appears to have aligned himself with the White House push for lower borrowing costs. In December, Trump said of Warsh, he thinks you have to lower interest rates. Renaissance Macro Research says in a note that Warsh could have been siding himself with the president to appease him. Quote, Warsh has been a monetary policy hawk his entire career, and most importantly, during a time when the labor markets fell out of bed. Quote, it said, quote, his dovishness today stems from convenience. The president risks getting duped. Quote, Brown said Warsh's, quote, long-run hawkish views should help it counteract concerns that he might morph into a full-blown Trump stooge. Quote, that said, this firm conviction with the both AI and Trump's administration regulatory push will help to hold down inflation, as well as his long-standing view that the Fed should operate with a much smaller balance sheet presents the risk of some upward pressure on long-term bond yields, end quote. Trump himself had suggested that he has considered whether to install Hassett, a White House official, and one of his top economic advisors as Fed chair, which didn't happen clearly. But this part just here to like really back to show that like people keep saying that he's been hawkish, but since 2011, that's clearly not, and again, that's 15 years worth of time that he's not been like that. So it's very interesting that that's how people perceive him. And I'm not sure where it's coming from. Maybe there's something I'm missing. If you guys want to put any links down below where I can find the information that shows that since 2011 he has continued to press more of a hawkish belief, I would love to be able to read that. But then even more so, you know, people are saying that Trump has told him to be able to that he's going to cut it, but I have not seen anything yet where Trump specifically says he will lower it. He just says he thinks you have to lower it. Like he's agreeing, like, hey, this might be a thing that happened. And so I think it's really, really, really prevalent right now that we're really specifically listening to what they actually say and not what the news says they said, right? So I think, you know, this specific quote, right, in December, Trump said he thinks you have to lower rates. If people are taking that quote and saying, well, Trump said you will lower rates, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. And so if there's another one, this is from December, right? So it's been over 6 months. If Trump at any point in between there has said that, then please link me in it. I want to see it. I want to, because like a big problem I'm having, like going through all this, is there's so many where it's all speculation. They don't quote it. They don't mark like where they've got the information from. They're just like, well, they said, and I believe, and I think, and this is like, that's so cool that you have a great opinion, but I need the facts. I need the facts. All of this is also, I'm going to link down below in the comments, so please go check it out yourself. The last little parts that I want to go through here, which we're not going to listen to all of it, but is a couple. We have one from CBC News and one from Associated Press, and this is just some sections where Kevin Warsh, it says on Tuesday, so I think last Tuesday, where he was being questioned by, I don't know, some board or something. I need to look into it a little bit more. The Congress or whatever was like questioning him about what he says. We have Mr. Van Hollen, and then I can't read what this man's name tag says. I love that they have the honorable whatever here, though. That's not the same guy, right? No. Okay, so we're going to start with Mr. Van Hollen and what he has to say about him
Thank you. Mr. Warsh, good to see you.
We're going to listen to his question.
Reviewing your record, I am concerned that your position on interest rates seems to shift with what's politically convenient rather than based on sound
Which is the biggest concern
judgment.
that everyone's having.
In the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, the worst recession since the Great Depression, with some of the worst unemployment in our lifetimes, you were a hawkish voice, expressing concern that the Fed might wait too long to raise rates. I think,
which again is interesting because I have not found anything from that time period where he said that. But you know, a few years later in 2011, I did see that he was arguing that like they were not handling it appropriately. So
you got it wrong then, but now you seem to have swung 180 degrees in the opposite direction to embrace lower rates, a view that could...
And again, this guy just said, you seem to be hawkish, but he has not given any proof of when that happened, right? And I think my favorite part is that Kevin Warsh doesn't disagree with him at all. He just tries to answer the question.
Conveniently aligns with the president who nominated you. You've made this pivot even as today prices are too high. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
Our economy works for families.
He's like, you have said that prices are too high, and we all know that. Okay. All right. So he's agreeing.
When prices are affordable and unemployment is low. That's why price stability is an important part of the Fed's mandate, right?
Senator, yes.
And the Fed uses its monetary policy tools for
See,
price
he just
stability.
answers. I love that. He doesn't even try to argue with anything that he said. He's not like, oh, well, I wasn't hawkish or da-da-da. No, he's just like, yes.
Full employment, that's the job Congress
So this is
gave
senators,
to the
okay.
Fed. Here's how Ben Bernanke described how the Fed uses those tools. He said, and I'm quoting, generally, if economic weakness is the primary...
I like how he can quote this guy, but he couldn't quote a moment where he was a hawkish before. He just had to throw that in there.
...very concern, the Fed acts to reduce interest rates, which supports the economy.
Mm-hmm.
If the economy is overheating,
Mm-hmm.
the Fed can raise interest rates to constrain inflationary pressures.
Right.
End of quote. So that's a textbook model of the Fed. Cutting
textbook.
rates supports the economy.
A textbook, but not in practice, right? Not in practice. Just like could be something you do.
Can lead
but
to
okay.
higher inflation, while raising rates helps to fight inflation, but can limit growth. Do you agree with Chairman Bernanke that that's generally how the Fed can use monetary policy to affect the economy?
Senator, I do agree generally with that
I really wish he would have let him finish this part because I really wanted to hear what he was going to say.
proposition, but I'll note at a moment like this, the supply side of the economy is changing dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
So the core of what
Which is
Chairman
true.
Bernanke said is a question about what's the economy's potential. As I said in my opening remarks, I think the economy's potential is growing quite quickly, and that makes the
fair.
decision that you tee up to be a difficult one, and one that the Fed's going to have to dig deep in
Right.
evaluating what's the right policy choice in the upcoming meetings.
Fair.
Bob, I want to push you a little bit on that.
It's not this section, it's after this that he like interrupts him, but I do think it's like it's fair for him to say like first off he's saying like there's policies, so he's saying there's more than just this one thing that we'd be focusing on. And he's also saying too, like it's not just up to me, like we all need to decide together. And I love that type of mentality. And that is not the type of mentality that you would hear from somebody who's going to be a lackey, right? You're not going to hear that thought process from somebody who's like, well, Trump, like he would, if he wanted, he would have said something more like, oh, well, like Trump thinks this and I think that. And so this is probably what I'm going to do. Like if he was just going to be a lackey, like that's, you know, maybe even avoid the question altogether, not even answer and just be like, oh, well, that's not something I can discuss here with you right now. Like, right? But he didn't.
In a moment, but right now the Fed has set its main interest rate at 3.5 to 3.7%. Last December, President Trump told the Wall Street Journal he wanted to cut rates to 1% and maybe lower than that
Okay.
by the end
But
of
Trump can't
this
because
year.
it's up to the federal person.
So
So
just to better understand how you think
federal
about
chairs.
economics, in the economic model Bernanke laid out, let's say there's an economy with decent growth and no recession. If the central bank were to cut rates from 3.5 to 1% or lower, a massive cut,
Right.
that would typically push prices up, right?
Senator, unlike many of my colleagues, past and present, I don't believe in forward guidance. I don't believe that I should be previewing.
Okay, so here's the part. He's saying, like, unlike other people, like, I don't think the best thing for me to do is to just sit here and tell you what I would just plain out would do, like, without communicating with my team, without, putting all of the other things into perspective and deciding what would be best. Like, I don't think it's best for me to just directly answer this question so that way you can say, if I cut rates, that I had said I disagreed, right? Like, he's like, I don't think that's smart of me right now.
Doing for you what a future decision might be. I think it's essential that the
Warsh,
Fed make decisions in the room.
Mr. Warsh, I'm not asking you what decision.
See, interrupting.
Obviously, that's going to be up to you. I'm asking
Let him
you
finish.
for the framework in which you think about these things. And it seems a pretty straightforward question.
Which he
about
did answer.
What would happen if we reduced interest rates by the end of this year to 1% or less? And under the Bernanke model, and I think almost every economist or most economists would say that will drive up prices. And so that's what I'm asking you. Would you agree that would likely drive up prices?
So, Senator, the Fed has two important monetary policy tools. One is interest rates, and the other is a balance sheet that we
Which people have been
created
ignoring.
in the 2008 financial crisis. Those tools should be working in concert, not at cross purposes.
Right.
So it's hard for me to isolate one variable when
Right.
we have to have a discussion on the other.
All right.
So essentially he's saying, like, okay, which he was going to continue. He was going to say in general, right? He was going to answer the question anyways, but he still wanted to state, like, I am not going to behave in a way where I'm just focusing on one tool. I want to look at the big picture. I want to work with everything we have. I want to make sure that when we do stuff, like, that's what I'm getting from it, at least. And I really hate that now this guy interrupts him right when he's about to finish and answer the question, and now we don't get to hear what he was going to say.
Sorry.
Well, let me just say this was a
Yeah, go on. Say something, Van Hollen.
pretty clear question.
Was
about
it?
the framework in which these decisions are made? I have heard you talk about.
It was a clear question on making sure that I specifically made it so that way you had to answer a very specific question, even if you would not function in that form. I think that's interesting because let me put it to you this way. Let's say you have a dog, okay? And, your dog has all these problems, right? Like, it can't eat specific foods because if it has grains, the skin gets itchy, and like it has like digestive issues and stuff like that and whatnot. And so, you've gone through all these processes of finding the best food that fits for your dog. And unfortunately for most people, and what most people would say, unfortunately, would be like a dry food, right? A dry kibble. And then someone sits you down and is like, I've done all this research on what is best for dogs, and you should be feeding your dog like this fresh, wet food from like this company, and the research says that this is best for most dogs, so don't you think based on that your dog should be eating that food too? And then you're like, well, I mean, yeah, if my dog was like every other dog, I guess like the best food would be for that, but my dog isn't like that, and there's other situations here that I would need to talk to you about on why it is that doesn't quite work. And then he's like, well, I think it was a simple question for you to just answer yes or no to. Well, that's great. That's fucking great that you think it was a simple question that you could just answer yes or no to. But this guy is saying this is not the only variable. In this situation, there are multiple variables, and there's multiple people with their hands in the cookie jar, and we have to work together, and we have to focus together on how to deal with these multiple variables. Now, I could answer your question on this one variable, but the problem is that I cannot stop myself from looking at all the other variables because I am now in this chair to make these decisions. So it's very interesting that they're trying to corner him into like essentially saying something, and he's doing his best not to just tell them what it is they want to hear. He's trying to be very honest and like straightforward, and I don't know why, but that's making them upset. It's making the world upset.
How AI may change that calculations. I will just say, and I think you know this, I mean, I have this, the Financial Times pointed out.
Again, I love that he's like, oh, I prepped this little board, it's whiteboard, and I have like this information that I have so you can see that it's real. But again, he couldn't do that with proof of anything else that he's talked about Warsh about. Like anything he's brought up and said, like Warsh has said or Warsh has done or Warsh has believed, he didn't bring any factual evidence to the table, but to all this other random shit he has. All this other random stuff that doesn't... Anyways.
Economists reject Kevin Warsh's claim that the AI boom will enable rate cuts, and I find it just implausible to suggest that by the end of this year, AI would produce such increases in productivity.
And it's crazy because last year, I would have thought it'd be implausible that most companies would be integrating AI, and yet they are. And yet they have. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we can think are implausible. But the problem is that we just don't know what the fuck's going to happen. We don't know how people are going to react. And we don't know how the world is going to take on things. I'm sure when the computer was first made, most people would have said, it's implausible to think that every home will have a computer. That will have little tiny devices in our hand that are literally the same thing. Of course there was a time when that happened. So, I think it's implausible for a senator to be sitting here and saying that something's not even physically thought-worthy possible when that's not his job to be doing that.
That it could reduce.
I don't like Van Hollen, if you guys haven't noticed.
And you can't tell
I don't even know anything about him. I just don't like the way that he's talking.
So, Senator, can I say two things? First,
Senator,
sorry.
Quickly, sorry.
He's so kind. He apologizes, stops talking when anyone else starts talking. When any other conversation he pauses, sorry. No one else has apologized to him for interrupting him, for stopping his conversations. I can't perceive this person, what I've seen so far, as being someone who is going to be a lackey. It's really hard. I don't know if other people have watched the way he communicates, but the way you talk, especially in these situations, it's so important. I'm going to move on. I'm not going to finish that one, but it will be down in the link to another YouTube from the Associates Press. This one I don't know who this is.
Have you agreed with the president that you're going to lower interest rates?
Senator, I'm glad you framed it that way. The president never asked me to predetermine, commit, fix, decide on any interest rate decision
and here it
any
is.
of our discussions.
Ready?
Nor would I ever agree to do so.
So the president
Exactly.
has never sat you down, looked you in the eye,
This
and
part.
said, "Here's the deal, Scooter.
Scooter.
I'm going to appoint you, but you got to agree to lower interest rates." That didn't happen, or did happen?
The president
He already answered.
never once asked me to commit to any particular interest rate decision, period, and nor would I ever agree to do so if he had, but he never did.
Okay.
Was honored he nominated me. Like everyone else in the committee in the world, I've heard his view on interest rates. It sounded very similar to me to every other president in economic history that I've studied.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, so that's this next guy Gallego goes for a little bit, but I don't really like what he's trying to do here. So you guys can watch it if you like, but I just think it's very interesting. It's like they don't have anything else to talk about. They don't have anything else to question upon. It's interest rates. Are you going to be the lackey of the president? Interest rates. Are you going to be the lackey? Come on. He's tried to bring up other situations. He's tried to talk about other things. And he's answering so clearly. He's being so nice. So I'm not, persona-wise, I'm not seeing from the internet, from these, where people are getting this. I really think it's just that people are so upset with Trump right now that they have a very negative look on anyone that Trump supports, even if people haven't done the research. So to answer the question on the YouTube that was asked of me, I'm not really sure what's going to happen because he has not been very clear about the full goal, but he has been clear that he has plans to adjust the way that things work. It could mean some really upsetting things for the economy short term, especially if he does it really harshly and really quickly. I don't know if that's his exact goal to do it that way. It doesn't quite seem like it, but for some reason it seems like that's what people are expecting from him. So really we're only going to have to like see what policies he comes up with, what actions he actually does, and then kind of move forward from there. So I think right now it's a little early to be able to say what's going to happen. He just got in on the 15th. It's only been 3 days. It's been 3 days, you know. I was looking. This is the most recent stuff that he's spoken about out in public. I haven't really heard anything. I know a lot of people are expecting, you know, there is actually this person. This is one of the first videos that I actually watched was from this guy right here. I'll leave this one here too. I kind of like him. It's very interesting.
What did you find?
What did you find? It's funny. It was just sitting here on the side,
what I'm trying
so
to figure
I wasn't. I wasn't even gonna put this in.
We have a new chairman at the Federal Reserve Bank.
Yeah.
His name is Kevin Warsh. He was handpicked by President Trump. And
Well, I don't know if he was handpicked by President Trump because, like we said in 2011, when was it? 2014. He did try and go after the seat then too, and so him coming back and doing it again is not very handpicky of Trump, but he did have his support. That is true.
now the whole world and the stock market is watching. Because
yeah.
he's either going to pump the stock market and risk breaking the dollar.
Oh, he's not. That's definitely not going to happen. I don't know why he says that. It's so funny, actually. It's so crazy. This is like one of the first videos I watched, and I don't remember him saying that, actually, so it's very interesting. I don't know why he said that. He's not.
Or he's going to save the dollar and risk breaking the economy.
He's going to risk breaking the economy. Most likely, he's going to risk breaking the economy, to be honest, from what I can perceive, that's his goal. Is he wants to shrink the budget, he wants to lower interest rates, and I think he's going to do his best to figure out how to do that. I think that, I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know how that's going to affect us. It could, short term, it's probably going to be extremely rough, like I said. Long term, it could be really good for us.
Now, the reason why this is even more interesting is because we're already starting to see conflicts between President Trump and Kevin Warsh. Before Kevin Warsh was actually entering the Federal Reserve
Oh,
Bank,
shit. This is actually 11 hours ago, so this is really recent. I watched a different one from him. Oh, and they're already having problems,
President Trump
huh?
made it very clear that he's not going to appoint anybody who would not do exactly what he says. President Trump.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. And Kevin Warsh, like we just saw and listened to in that video, was he was like, I would never just do what somebody else says. I would just never do that. So, Kevin Warsh very much could have, he was like, yeah, I'm President Trump, I'll do what you say. And then it's like, now that he has it, he's like, I did what I had to get here, folks, but I'm going to do what I think's right. So, who knows? Sometimes you got to play the game a little bit when you want to get in the seat, even if you're a good person, you know?
Wants lower interest rates, he wants more money printing, he wants more stimulus, because
He does not want more money printed.
all this stuff would boost the economy, boost the stock market. Well, Kevin Warsh just
Oh,
spoke
that's Trump. He was talking about Trump. Sorry, my bad.
in front of the Senate. And here's what he said.
Ooh, yeah.
Quote, I will not be the president's sock puppet, and the Fed will stay strictly independent.
Boop,
Now,
boop.
talking about the independent side, although it's called the Federal Reserve Bank, it's not a bank because
Yeah,
you
we
and
know that.
can't
I know
grow.
that.
Because, well, it's its own independent.
Yep. It's not a bank.
Want a booming stock market, not to appease the president, is to do what's right for the economy.
Yeah.
It's to balance economic stimulus with inflation. Because
Right.
if the Federal Reserve Bank were to just cut interest rates and print money, that would boost the economy, but it would make an inflation problem.
Right.
So
And
the
it
Federal
has.
Reserve Bank is
It has,
supposed
very
to
badly.
manage the economic side with the inflation side. Different things that you want to pay attention to. Now, whether or not the Federal Reserve Bank does a good job is a topic for a separate video,
Right.
but that's why Kevin Warsh specifically talked about maintaining independence at the Federal Reserve Bank, because for some time it seemed like we would lose that sense of independence,
With-
and that the Federal Reserve Bank would do
Again,
whatever
which
the
I'm
pre-
not really sure why people felt that way. I think just because President Trump was giving his vote to this guy. People just assumed without looking into his history, which if you look into his history, it's very clear that like he, again, since 2011 has held a very similar belief in the way that the Federal Reserve should work. So
president wanted. Of course, it's still very early to say that,
it's
but
super
these
early.
are some of the concerns that people
Super
have.
early.
Now,
3 days,
Kevin
guys.
Warsh
3 days.
has given some statements as to what he wants to do, and these are things you want to pay attention to, because if you
Yes,
can
tell me
understand
that.
what the Federal Reserve Bank is going to do, you can understand where money is going to move. You
Okay.
can understand where the economy
Yes,
is going
yes,
to move.
yes.
The Reserve Bank is the most powerful central bank
Yeah,
that
yes.
can control and manipulate the world's reserve currency.
Uh-huh.
That means that
Yeah.
of the
Can
stock
you tell
market
me what it was?
versus what President Trump wants. Now, I want to remind you, put together, we'll walk you through how morning. So if you have down on the during his confirmation over the to predetermine, commit, fix, or decide on any interest rate
Okay.
decision in any of our discussions. Now that's a very interesting thing to say, because if you've been paying attention to any of the financial news or the things that I've been talking about on my channel, for the last year and some change, ever since President Trump entered the White House,
Okay.
he had been demanding the Federal Reserve
Yes, we
should
know.
cut interest rates.
We know.
Have the
We all
lowest
know what
President
Trump's been
Trump
doing.
wants lower
That he
interest
wants
rates.
lower
Just for
interest
one,
rates, and he's been trying
you
to
can
push
go and
up the
get
last
two
guy to.
banks and institutions can borrow money cheap,
Yes,
sitting
we know
on
that.
about $39 trillion,
We
just
know there's a
because
lot of
they're
debt.
accumulating more debt. But
Mm-hmm.
because the interest rate on that debt keeps going up as interest rates go higher, so it would give the ability to the government to refinance that debt at a lower interest rate.
We,
Well, President Trump has said time and time again that he wouldn't. Now Kevin Warsh is saying something different on his first day on the job.
right.
He's saying, yeah, President Trump never asked me to actually cut interest rates. He never asked me to actually commit to cutting interest rates.
Mm-hmm. That's what he said.
So
We
we're
saw
starting
that.
to see a little bit of a deviation over there. The reason why this is so significant right now is because when you cut interest rates, yes, you can think of it
Oh
this
my
way.
gosh.
Mortgage rates fell
I don't
by
know. You guys can listen to that. I'm on the edge if I like this guy. I've liked some of his videos and stuff, but he talks a little bit too much for me. 'Cause we're like 5 minutes into a 17-minute video, and he has not said anything about his like what he said, and I feel like we've already kind of gone through some of it anyway. So I don't know. I'm not real sure what's gonna happen. Truthfully, I'm not really sure where the economy is gonna go. It really is up to the Federal Reserve to decide. It is kind of up to Kevin Warsh and the group to decide what we're gonna do. Anyways, I think that's everything I'm gonna share for now. I think I definitely need to do a little bit more research on the past. What are they called? My brain's forgetting how to. What are they called? The chairs. On the Federal Reserve chairmans and all that stuff, and see what their beliefs are, because it kind of seems like Kevin Warsh doesn't want to make all the decisions on his own, nor is he going to make them very what's the word, like politicized. Because he's willing to share what he thinks, but he's just not going to say, like, this is for sure what I'm going to do. Like, and I don't think that's a wrong thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. Especially depending on if he's going to adjust the way that he plans to do things against the way that Trump wants to do things. I think it's better for him to kind of keep it to himself and to the chair, like the team of people that he's going to be working with and make these decisions. I also, a thing that I haven't looked into that I now realize maybe I should have put a little bit more time into is some people and him have talked about policies and stuff like that. And so I need to figure out what it is about these policies he specifically wants to change, what these policies would look like, and how that change would come about. That's something I don't really know much about. So that could also possibly really affect the economy and like just how things play out. But I think I'll make another video in the future. I'll do some more research. We'll make another video and we'll see how it goes from there. Until then, guys, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, leave a comment down below. How does this all make you feel? What have you know? What is like? Leave me below any information that you guys have found that you feel like maybe I missed or misunderstood. And until next time, bye.